Hello, welcome to our payroll onboarding demo. Today, we are going to go over the basics you will need to set up in order to be ready to process payroll. By now, you should have already had your welcome call with our team, signed into HR for help, accepted your terms, and had a brief walkthrough of your homework items. Now, to get started, click Payroll Setup on the left navigation bar and then select Payroll Setup again. The first place you will be taken to is the company address section. Here you will see the company address that we have on file for you. It's very important that you make sure that this address is correct and make sure that it is for mailing and filing. If you have any additional addresses, click Add Address here. You can fill in the address information and designate whether it's mailing or filing. If you have any remote employees or multiple locations, make sure that you add the addresses here as well. Additionally, if you are adding a remote employee or an employee that works at a different location, address, you will want to make sure to tell that information to our payroll team. This is important so that they can get them assigned to the correct working location. Once all addresses have been added, select I've added all addresses. This is going to take you to your federal tax information. You'll enter your entity type and legal name of your company, and you can find this information on your FEIN assignment form, and we'll need this information in order to file and pay taxes correctly. We already should have your federal EIN number on file from when you registered. However, we will need your taxpayer type. Select from the drop-down whether it's a C corporation, S corporation, sole proprietorship, LLC, etc. You'll want to designate your federal filing form, and if you're unsure what filing form you have, you can go to the IRS website and they can assist. Next, ensure that your legal entity name is accurate. Once ready, click Save and Continue. Next, you'll fill in your bank information. Here you can either verify your bank details with Plaid or enter your bank account details manually. We'll use your checking account to debit wages and taxes, and the account must be a checking account. Credit card, credit payments, and savings accounts aren't accepted. To verify with Plaid, you would simply click Verify with Plaid. We do recommend this because it is the fastest option. If you do enter your bank account information manually, it can take about 2 business days to receive 2 test deposits that you'll then have to come back to the system in order to verify. Next, you'll click Save and Continue, and this will take you to the payroll section where you're going to set up your pay schedule. You will want to pick your pay frequency that you're currently following. If you're not sure what your payroll schedule is, you can take a look at your latest pay stubs to determine it, or if you need to set up a pay schedule, you can read more about how to choose which pay schedule by clicking here. First, you can enter in a name. So for example, biweekly. You can choose the pay frequency. So every week, every other week, twice a month on the 15th and the last day of the month. Twice a month custom. So if you have maybe the 5th and the 20th, monthly on the last day of the month, and monthly custom. We're going to go ahead and do every other week, which is a biweekly schedule. We'll choose our first pay date to be maybe next Friday. You want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to finish the payroll onboarding as well as have your employees onboard and start using the time clock. So just keep that in mind. And then the first pay period end date. Since we're having our check date on the 26th, I'm going to say that my pay period is going to end on Sunday the 21st. And I can also preview my upcoming paydays and pay schedule to make sure that everything aligns with what I'm currently doing. I'll then click Save and Continue, and Save and Continue again. This is going to bring us to the state tax info section. Here, any state that you're operating in should show up here for you to complete the information. It is very important that you complete all the fields. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to the specific agency in order to help you. Additionally, we do have a resource where you can view all of the different states, all of the different things that need to be authorized, and it will give you the information on on how to authorize Gusto as your third party in order for Gusto to pay and file taxes on your behalf. So I will show you that resource in a moment. We're going to go ahead and set this office up as California. However, each state's requirements are a little bit different, which is why I'll share that resource with you. So clicking here to continue setup, it's going to ask me for my EDD number, which is something that California requires, as well as my tax rates. So I'd fill that in. I would typically fill in my EDD number. However, this is just a demo, so we're going to leave that blank. Make sure that you do not leave that blank. And if you do, make sure that you come back to it so that we can go ahead and get that information and then file the taxes on your behalf. All right, so real quick, I want to show you that resource that I talked about. Okay, here is the state registration resources. So depending on what state you operate in, it will give you all of the information on how you register with the state, registering with the state of California and what you actually need to register with. It's different for each state. It'll also give you information on how to give third-party access to Gusto in order for them to pay and file taxes on your behalf. This is a very, very important step. So not only do we need those account numbers in the payroll setup, so here, again, it's going to ask for different things for each state. So we'll need those account numbers, but we'll also need to make sure that you do go through and authorize Gusto as that third party. That is a super important part of that step. So going back, for example, we took a look at California. If you take a look at Colorado, Colorado has a lot more information here. So Colorado, you need to make sure that you have information for the Department of Revenue, the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment, the local Colorado tax agencies. So a lot of different things. And then you also need to make sure that you're authorizing them as a third party with all 4 of these different agencies. So very important that that does happen. All right, so once you finish the state tax info section, you will want to go ahead and assign a company signatory. The company signatory is responsible for electronically signing all government forms Gusto creates and is generally a member of the business or partnership. Each time a signatory is updated, we will file a new 8655 with the IRS and give Gusto the reporting agent authorization we need to file and pay your taxes. Your signatory must be authorized by the IRS. A signatory is required to finish the onboarding and sign documents, and to continue, you must be authorized to sign official documents for the company. So again, make sure this information is accurate. We'll use it to submit that 8655 form so that we can pay and file your federal taxes. And if you do not know who your authorized signatory is, you can call this number here. So it's 800-829-4933. Here you'll put the signatory information. I'll fill in just some fake information here. Obviously, this is just a demo account, so it's not really being authorized. Here you can choose a title. So signatory is typically an owner, a president, a vice president, a treasurer, corporate officer, a partner, or a member. You'll add in a phone number, the date of birth for the signatory, and then the social, as well as the home address. Next, you are going to have the signatory sign the company documents electronically. So that first one is that 8655 form, which again authorizes us to pay and file federal taxes on your behalf. If I ask, I mean Gusto. And then direct deposit authorization, which authorizes Gusto to debit and credit your bank account and file and pay your taxes. So here we'll go ahead and click sign. You can download the document if you need to, take a look, make sure that everything's correct, fill it in, and then sign it. And then you'll do the same for the direct deposit authorization. Once these documents are signed, they will live here. So if you ever need to reference them again, you have access to them here. You also have a documents section and then tax documents where you can reference those as well. All right, now that we've added our signatory, the next step is going to be our previous payroll records. So this is a very important section. If your first check date with us is at the beginning of January, and you will not have paid employees in that calendar year at that point, you would not need to complete the previous payroll section, as the year-to-dates are not required. However, if your check date is toward the middle or end of January, and you've already processed at least one check for January, you will need to enter previous payroll records to ensure we have the correct year-to-date totals. Now, the good news is that our team can help with this process, the year-to-date totals. So feel free to reach out to our payroll team and they can assist if you need to add in those previous payrolls. One thing that you will need to do is add in any dismissed employees. So this could be anybody that has been terminated this year, voluntarily left, if they've been paid in this calendar year. So let's just say this is the second check date in January and they left in that first check of January, then you would need to go ahead and get them added in, or any temporary employees that may have worked in January that are no longer with you. So to add a dismissed employee, you'll click Add Dismissed Employee. You would add in their legal name. You would add in their social, their date of birth, and again, this is just all fake information for this demo account. You'd select their work address, their hire date with you, and then of course their last date employed. And let's just pretend that this was January. And then as you would also add in their address and then click Save. After we've added them in, you'll see them in the Dismissed Employees section. So here we can see Mark Smith. His start date was December 16th. Maybe he was a temporary employee and he worked for 2 days. And then I added in his details. If there was any additional employees who fit that criteria where you did pay them in this calendar year and you have terminated them since, or maybe they were a temporary employee and they're no longer working with you, we still need to get their year-to-date information in so everything balances out. So you will need to add them in as dismissed employees. Once that's done, you're going to go to the next section where you can add in the previous payrolls. This is so we can accurately calculate and report your taxes through the rest of the year. So what you'll need is your quarter-to-date pay stub information from each prior quarter for active and dismissed employees paid this year. And again, if your first check date is going to be at the beginning of January and you haven't paid employees yet for January, you would not need to do this previous payroll section. So keep that in mind. Individual pay stubs from the current quarter for active and dismissed employees will also be needed. And if you need a breakdown of what each of the quarters are, here you have a little table. And again, we can have our team assist with this process. So if you do want assistance with this process, just let us know. To add a previous payroll, you'll click on the blue Add Previous Payroll button. You would add in the check date. So let's just pretend that we had one on the 12th. And let's pretend that our pay period started on the 24th and ran through until the 7th. All right. And because we had no employees that were paid during that time, that one didn't show up. So let's go ahead and add another one. So we'll add the one that our temporary employee was in. So he was in this section, so he would have that check date, pay period, started on the 1st and ended on the 14th. Oh wait, this is actually maybe the 19th. That's not gonna work. Let's do that. There we go. So now we have our pay period. We had to create one, and then now we have Mark Smith showing up here. This is where we would want to go ahead and click Add Amounts, and we would fill in this information here for Mark. So all of his regular wages, regular hours. We would add in the bonuses, tips, and commissions. We would add in the deduction and contribution information and tax amounts. Perfect. And then once we did that, the next step would be to review the tax liabilities. So since we're switching payroll companies mid-year potentially, this is if you're not starting in that first check date of January, we would calculate the amounts that you may owe to the different agencies, select what you would like us to pay on your behalf. If you need to confirm the amounts, you should ask your current payroll provider for the outstanding tax liabilities, and we will debit your company's bank account for the total of tax amounts 2 days after you run your first payroll with us. So just keep that in mind. And again, typically our team will assist you with this process if you have any questions. All right, on to the next section, which is verifying the bank account. So back when we talked about adding your bank information, you have the choice to verify via Plaid, or you could go ahead and add that information in manually. If you chose to add the information in manually, you do have to verify your bank account. We will send 2 test deposits to the account. It's going to be like, 30 cents or 70 cents, two different transactions. You will then take those transactions and you would enter them into this section. Since we verified via Plaid, you won't see it here, but you will if you decide to do it manually. Great. And then we are done with the company onboarding. Great, now we are done with the company onboarding. So we are going to go through how to actually onboard an employee. So once you've added them into HR for Health using the Add Employee section, you will go ahead and go to Timekeeping, Taxes and Bank Account. Each of your employees will have one of these sections that they will need to fill out for themselves. You should also have a section like this if you are taking a pay. You will need to fill this out as well. We populate a lot of the information that we have already received upon registration, but we will need to collect the Social Security number. If you have multiple locations, so let's go back to personal details. If you have multiple working locations and your employee is supposed to be working at a different location than the rest of the company, like maybe they're remote, again, please reach out to our team to make sure that the work address that is listed for each employee is the correct work address for tax purposes. All right, next we have home address. So this is where your employee will verify that the home address that we have on file for them is accurate. It should have been what they have entered in the past. So if there's a typo, they should fix it. Or if it has updated since, they should also update it here. Next, they'll fill in their federal tax information. So their federal filing status, and then the different dependent totals, other income deductions, and extra withholdings. If they have any questions on what to fill in here, they should be reaching out to their CPA or accountant. However, there are helpful links on how to fill out that form, so they can also use those helpful links. Next, they'll be required to fill in the state tax information if they're in a state that has tax withholdings. All right. Next, they'll fill in their payment method, so whether they want to have direct deposit or check. If they choose the direct deposit option, they can add up to 6 bank accounts and decide how they want to split those bank accounts. All right. Next, we have the document section. If they were to have chosen the direct deposit authorization, they would have 2 forms. They would have the federal W-4 form and a direct deposit authorization. However, because we opted for a check payment method, we only have the W-4 that needs to be signed. So I'd go ahead and fill that out. Perfect, and it's ready to go. So now the employee has completed their payroll onboarding. So of course they still have their new hire checklist documents that they should fill in. Those can be found on their specific documents section. So here I have all of the employee documents. Keep that in mind. This is just the payroll onboarding to make sure that they can get paid. Once they've filled in that information, you as the employer will receive an alert. And it'll say that your employee has state tax questions that need your attention. It is very important that you complete this because even though they have completed their onboarding, they will not show up on the payroll report that you will run when it's time if this has not been answered. So essentially, you'll click on this link. It'll ask you if you want to file the new hire report. If this employee is a new hire and they have not been filed with the state, then you would say yes. If not, you would say no. And there we have it. So very simple process. Once you get logged in, the first thing that you're going to want to do is fill in that payroll setup section, company addresses, federal tax information. If you have employees who are added, you will want to make sure that they fill in their taxes and bank account section. The other part that we want to go over is setting up your benefits. So you will be able to set up your company benefits in our system. This can be things like 401k, medical, dental, things along those lines. And this is more so for reporting purposes to make sure that those are reported on the payroll report. The money movement would be done through you and through the company, but this would make sure that it gets reported. So when you click add benefit, you would type in medical insurance, for example. There is a list of all of the different options. Click continue. Here you would go ahead and add in the deduction per pay period. This would be a standard for this benefit itself. However, once we've added it in, we can actually go back and change it for each employee depending on what their specific contribution is or the company's contribution is for them. So here we've gone ahead and added it. We have 2 employees who will have a medical benefits. The employee deduction is 100. The company contribution is 50. And then here we can go ahead and edit that employee benefit. And we could change the contributions here if need be. Additionally, if we have it active, but we want to stop making contributions for now, we can go ahead and click this button to turn it off. Alrighty. Next, we have employee deduction. So if there's any garnishments or deductions that need to be set up, you would go to Payroll on the navigation bar. Then you would select deductions. And from here, you can add a deduction. You'd add in the description, for example, loan repayment. You can choose the frequency, whether it's a recurring or one time, the percentage of pay or a fixed amount. And then if it's, let's see, a court-ordered deduction, we'll say $100. If it is recurring, you can choose an annual maximum as well. We'll say 200. Perfect, and click save. If you have any garnishments that need to be set up currently, you would do that through our payroll team. So if there are any that need to be set up, reach out to your payroll person or our payroll team, and they can get that set up for you on the back end to ensure that it has the proper reporting for that garnishment. However, if it is any other type of deduction, it can be done in this section for now. Alrighty. That is how you complete the payroll onboarding. It is very simple. I know it sounds crazy, but it is very simple. Again, those main things, making sure that you have your company addresses all listed here if you are in multiple different locations or have employees that are remote. This ensures that they can get assigned to their correct working location. And then state tax information is also really critical. Make sure that you are providing all of the different account numbers for all of the different state agencies. That is very important. And you have this resource here. It is called the State Registration and Resources. You can also get to this link here by going to our Resource Center, which is in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You'll see Support Resources. And if you type in state tax info, you'll have questions that we answered here, and then you can click this link, which will take you here. And of course, if you have any other, software questions or questions in general, those support resources have a bunch of different topics here that can help you. All right, well, thank you for your time today, and good luck with your onboarding.